What if Padme Amidala was a Sith Lord? Let's start this during the Phantom Menace. Padme had successfully risen to the role of Queen of Naboo, whilst hiding her true nature as a Sith Lord. She was especially happy with the fact she had hidden her powers from Senator Palpatine, whom she could sense was strong with the dark side. She knows that Palpatine used her as a pawn to defeat his political enemies and to get her under his control, but this would end up positively for her. She knew if she was going to gain control over the galaxy, she would eventually have to join the Senate. Being the Queen was the best way to do this. The invasion of Naboo takes place, an interesting and bold move by Palpatine. She knew he was going for the Chancellorship and praised him for this unique strategy. It would almost certainly work. However, there were aspects that she didn't expect. Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi were sent to protect her, both oblivious to her power in the Force. They escape Naboo and travel to Tatooine, where things start to get interesting. In search of new parts for their ship, they enter a shop at the suggestion of Master Qui-Gon. Padme thought nothing of it until she laid eyes on the boy working in the shop. He couldn't be older than 9, but exhibited the strongest connection to the Force she had ever felt. She stared at the boy, shocked and frozen in place by this revelation. She turned her head to Master Qui-Gon and could tell he sensed the same. However, maybe not to the same extent. Qui-Gon went off with the owner, and Padme noticed the boy staring at her before asking,
"Are you an angel?"
What?
"An angel."
She had a quick conversation with the boy, whom she knew was called Anakin. She was amazed at his ambition to leave this planet and his intelligence for a boy so young. The fact he was a slave topped it off, the perfect beginning for a Sith. Padme had contemplated whether she would take an apprentice for a while now. She was waiting for the right opportunity. Was this it? They left the shop, and Padme walked in silence, pondering about what has just occurred. Before she let her thoughts get carried away, the boy Anakin joined them and warned them of the sandstorm coming before inviting them to his house for the night. Padme was amazed at what she had stumbled upon. A slave woman and a slave son in the Outer Rim, and the boy has the strongest connection to the Force she's ever seen. She decided there and then that the boy would be hers. However, there was the problem of Qui-Gon. He had noticed the boy's potential and was eager to harness it. She overheard Qui-Gon taking the boy's blood test. Over 20,000 midichlorians. She held a similar number at 18,000. Had the Force brought them together? Padme concluded there was nothing she could do at the moment. The Jedi have now caught wind of the boy. Qui-Gon has taken notice of him and now taken a blood sample which was sent back to Obi-Wan on their ship. If she decided to take him there and then, there would be suspicions about what happened and might lead back to her being involved. If she was to ever control the galaxy, her identity mustn't be revealed before then. She was sloppy. She waited too long. If she had taken the boy before Qui-Gon sent the blood test to Obi-Wan, then she would have kept her identity secret. But now the boy is on the Jedi's records. They would ultimately pin things back to her. Padme decided the best thing to do is to let the Jedi have Anakin, have him train in the Jedi Order, and gain knowledge of the Force. She could sense the boy's attitude. He was ambitious, and his life as a slave with his mother taught him to care only for those close to him, fundamental traits that Jedi training could not overwrite. He was simply too old. He would be at odds with Jedi training from the beginning, and when the time comes, she would take him for herself. Palpatine successfully becomes Chancellor of the Republic. Padme's 2 terms as Queen are up, and she is asked to join the Senate by the current Queen. 10 years have passed by, and Anakin has overcome her expectations. She has kept a keen eye on him and noticed he is immensely strong in the Force for someone of his age. Although there is a problem, she has noticed Palpatine has also taken a liking to the boy. Ever since Qui-Gon's death on Naboo, Palpatine has swooped in to be the father figure Anakin never had. Because of this, Anakin would be easily manipulatable. Padme must take drastic measures. Her plan was to seduce the now 19-year-old boy and bring him under her control and do her bidding. However, Padme's seduction wouldn't go as planned. Padme decided that the only way she would be accepted by the galaxy as their leader is if she was viewed as a pacifist, a genuine good person that wanted to see the best for the galaxy. She had caught wind of Palpatine's plans to initiate a galactic conflict through her connections. After all, Dooku is the head of the Separatists, and Palpatine is his master, even if the Jedi deny it. Palpatine was attempting to pass the Military Creation Act in the Senate, and this is when Padme would begin building her image. She openly opposed the creation of a Republic military for the whole Senate to see, and begged that a diplomatic solution to the conflict could be achieved. She knew this was useless, and that war was inevitable, but she had to build her image. She needed the Senate and galaxy to think her intentions were pure. Count Dooku has been ordering assassination attempts against Padme because of this, a complete coincidence, but she would use this to her advantage. This is the moment she would bring a young Skywalker under her wing. Anakin and Obi-Wan are assigned to protect Padme. The two Jedi meet with the senator in her office. She greets Obi-Wan joyfully, having not seen him in 10 years, and then lays her eyes upon Anakin, making sure to compliment his growth. Although after this comment, she senses something within Anakin. Maybe it will be easier to seduce him than she thought. Anakin is assigned to escort Padme to Naboo. She plans to begin laying the foundations of her seduction, but Anakin beats her to it, never losing an opportunity to compliment her beauty or stare at her with a look of want in his eyes. Padme is caught off guard initially, but reciprocates Anakin's actions. She can't help but enjoy the time spent with Anakin. She likes his forward nature and confidence in himself. Every time he speaks, she feels his strength in the Force, and she begins to feel a way which she has never felt before. This goes on for days, until the two lock lips at her lake house. Padme could have never expected this to happen. She's fallen for Anakin Skywalker, who ended up seducing her before she could seduce him. They get married back on Naboo, right after the beginning of the Clone War. Padme's plans had changed. Although she hadn't revealed her true identity to Anakin, he would be a huge part of her plan. The fact that Palpatine has a grip over Anakin hasn't changed, but she believes her relationship to Anakin would be far stronger than theirs. Having to keep their relationship secret during the Clone War was difficult for the both of them, but Padme was used to keeping secrets. This only strengthened their relationship, and Padme wanted to reveal herself to Anakin with the hopes of him joining her, but she knew it was too early. She knows Palpatine's plan to corrupt the Jedi and Senate with the Clone War, and it's working so far, but she will soon turn the favor to her. Padme continues her pacifist stance in the Senate, and has become the unofficial leader of this faction within the Senate. This was indeed her goal. Things seem to be going as planned. There are hundreds of senators who align with her beliefs, and this number will only increase as the war goes on. However, the Clone War continues regardless of this fact. She knows her pacifist group cannot defeat Palpatine's faction in the Senate, but all that matters is that she appears to fight him. In this instant, Padme's beliefs and goals align with Palpatine. They both want to rule the galaxy, but the main difference between them is that Padme knows about Palpatine, but Palpatine has no clue about Padme. She intends to let him carry out his well thought out plan to take out the Jedi and swoop in at the final moments. All his hard work will be for nothing. The Jedi have helped develop Anakin more than Padme could have imagined. Anakin is no normal Jedi. Padme purposefully put herself in danger multiple times so that Anakin would be forced to save her. But she didn't make it easy. She made it so Anakin slowly had to commit more and more unethical tasks in order to save her, slowly bringing her lover down the dark path. Anakin would do anything for his wife. The fact that Padme was in a lot of danger in Anakin's mind made him resent the Clone War, and he would do anything to end it. He struggled with a deep internal conflict. He knew, deep down, he had forgone the Jedi's principles when he married his wife, but to bring an end to the Clone War, he would have to forsake the Jedi's key principle: selflessness. Anakin had become power hungry. He needed power to save his wife and to bring an end to the conflict. He wanted power for himself and his wife so they could live their lives without fear. Padme of course facilitated this, praising Anakin whenever he reached new levels of power and ability, leading Anakin to crave strength even more. Very soon, he would seek to break free from the Jedi's grasp. Anakin and Obi-Wan returned from the Battle of Coruscant after saving the Chancellor and killing Count Dooku. Palpatine shows his gratitude to Anakin and wishes for him to be placed on the Jedi Council. That night, Anakin tells Padme about this at their home. Padme can tell Anakin is overjoyed and is genuinely happy for him. However, Padme knows this is Palpatine beginning his endgame, his final moves against the Jedi. He has almost brought the Jedi to their knees without revealing himself. Truly an act that deserves praise, and she will make sure he is remembered in history. His plans will come to fruition soon. Padme needs to know what Palpatine is doing at all times, and now that Anakin is his eyes and ears, he can also be hers. That night, to congratulate Anakin, she gives him a necklace of a sapphire-like pearl that can only be mined and found in the distinct place on Naboo where they got married. She tells him this symbolizes their love, which she truly does mean and feel, but she also hides an audio device so she can spy on Palpatine, but also the Council's dealings. The next day, Anakin and Palpatine meet, with Padme eagerly listening in. Palpatine is really laying on his manipulation. He is portraying the narrative to Anakin that he's scared the Jedi are plotting to take over the Republic. After just being denied the rank of Master, Anakin is more at odds with the Jedi than he's ever been. Palpatine tells Anakin he thinks the Clone War will end soon, but the Jedi are planning to use the chaos to take over the Republic and start a civil war. Anakin was shocked to hear this, and ultimately doesn't believe him right away. A council meeting later that day will convince Anakin. Palpatine was the main topic of discussion. The council asked Anakin to keep what was being said from Palpatine. He agreed, but ultimately wouldn't remain truthful. The council discussed how the Clone War was coming to an end, and that if the Chancellor didn't give up his emergency powers after General Grievous's death, then he should be removed from office. The plan was for the Jedi to take control of the Senate during this transition. It has clicked for Anakin. In his mind, Palpatine was right. The Jedi were planning on taking over. Padme listened intently and almost laughed during this council meeting. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Palpatine's plan was right, down to the hour. She couldn't help but praise him. Obviously, she knew the Jedi weren't plotting to take over, but Palpatine presented a convincing argument to Anakin. Padme knows there will be a lot of conflict in the coming days, and that Anakin, in his search for power, will attempt to profit from this. This was the perfect time to reveal herself. That night, Anakin went home to Padme and told her what he's been told by both Palpatine and the Jedi Council. Anakin tells her that it's going to be dangerous over the following days and that it's best she leaves for Naboo. Padme tells Anakin she won't, and she's been waiting a long time for this moment. Anakin looks confused and stays silent. Padme knows she has to tread carefully. She loves Anakin, and depending on how she handles the next few minutes will determine if their relationship continues. She reveals everything to Anakin, how she's a Sith Lord, planned to seduce and use him for her benefit, but ended up falling for him. She tells Anakin she's waited this long to tell him, because only after the Clone War would he realize the hypocrisy and corruption of the Jedi. If she revealed herself any earlier, he wouldn't have understood. Anakin sits down and considers what she's saying. Padme sits next to him and tells Anakin all she wants for him to rule and have absolute power over the galaxy together, and declares that she's unconditionally devoted to him. Anakin slowly nods and declares his devotion back to her, and that he'll join her. They embrace, but Padme tells Anakin that there is one problem: Palpatine. She tells Anakin his real identity and plans. Anakin sits in silence for 60 seconds, contemplating the situation before asking what to do. Padme tells him the plan for tomorrow, and the two head to bed, their love stronger than ever. The next day, Anakin heads to Palpatine's office. He tells Palpatine he believes him and thinks they should do something about it. Palpatine couldn't agree more and reveals himself as Darth Sidious, and Anakin agrees to join him. He kneels in front of Sidious and is given the title of Darth Vader. Sidious tells Vader that he should go to the Jedi Temple and began to walk out of his office. Sidious executed Order 66, and the both of them felt a shift in the Force. Anakin got to the end of Sidious's office and stopped at the door. He opened it, and in walked Padme, and both of them stared down the hallway towards Palpatine. He goes to ask what Padme is doing there, but he senses it before his words exit his mouth. He's been tricked. Anakin and Padme ignite their lightsabers and rush towards Palpatine. He had no choice but to fight back. He initiated by sending lightning down the hallway, but Padme rushed forward to block, and Anakin went around her to strike at Palpatine. Palpatine only just ignited his blades to block the strike from Anakin as he switched to defend the blow from Padme. He'd initially taken the defensive, looking for gaps to strike, but none presented to him. He must make them himself. He dug his blades into the ground, which forced Padme and Anakin away. He scraped his blades on the ground, which sent sparks into Anakin's eyes. His vision was blocked, and Palpatine made a killing strike, but Padme grabbed Palpatine with the Force, holding his blades back. Anakin regained vision, and cut off both of Sidious's forearms, causing him to drop his lightsabers. He looked down in shock, and collapsed to the floor. Padme walked up to him, and put her lightsaber under his chin to force his head up. She pulled back her lightsaber, and drove it into him, as she held eye contact, watching the life leave his eyes. Padme and Anakin rejoiced in their victory. The galaxy was theirs, only a few loose ends to tie. Together, they go to the Jedi Temple with the clone troopers. They successfully eliminate every Jedi that was in the Jedi Temple as well as a few stragglers. Padme kept this hidden from Anakin, but she'd spotted Obi-Wan making his way back to the temple and taken him out with ease. Anakin had mentioned bringing him to their side, but Padme wouldn't risk it. He was a tie to the light side in Anakin and must be dealt with. Yoda hadn't made it back from Kashyyyk, but he would eventually be dealt with. The Sith would deal with it. They then head over to the Senate chambers, who were waiting for Palpatine. However, Padme and Anakin took stage. They explained how Palpatine had attempted to take control over the galaxy for selfish means, and that the Jedi planned to seize power for themselves, following the Clone War. She told everyone she had, along with Anakin's help, stopped both of their tyranny. But to ensure the future of the Republic, they together would take control and convert the Republic into an empire, with her as Empress and Anakin as Emperor. They took control of Palpatine's influence over the Senate, bureaucracy, and galaxy to aid in their takeover. It took time, but ultimately their empire was established. Anakin and Padme at the forefront of control. For the few years following the beginning of the Empire, they mainly focused on hunting down escaped Jedi, but it all suddenly went quiet. For 2 to 3 years, no Jedi were found. They knew they hadn't completely wiped out all of the Jedi, and there were still some big names at play. This worried the Emperor and Empress, as they feared the beginning of resistance. They sent their Inquisitors hunting all around the galaxy, with no success. Something was happening. Anakin and Padme were in the throne room of their Imperial Dreadnought. Padme told Anakin she had good news. She was pregnant with their first child. Before Anakin could share her excitement, they were sent a video from their commander and described it as security footage from one of the Inquisitor's shuttles. The footage included a Togruta wielding white blades and a small green figure chopping down 2 Inquisitors with ease before looking at the camera and destroying it. Anakin and Padme look at each other shocked. This was a declaration of war. Anakin and Padme stand in shock as Ahsoka and Yoda have defeated a band of their Inquisitors, right after Padme revealed she was pregnant. Anakin mobilizes the rest of the Inquisitors. Every Inquisitor leads their own unit around the galaxy to places where rebel activity was suspected to be taking place. They didn't need proof. They acted on all the rumors they had received. Anakin and Padme have changed in their 5 years of reign. Anakin has fully embraced the dark side and fights to his strengths. He uses his brute strength and combines it with the Force to deliver strikes that cannot be blocked by anyone. In one-on-one combat, Anakin is unmatched in the entire galaxy. Padme was an accomplished Sith alchemist and integrates this into her fighting. She can use Sith spells to enhance the weapons she uses and create an impenetrable defense. Aside from her lightsaber, she wields an ancient Sith sword, Nightbringer, that she instills with her Sith alchemy, making it a weapon no one wants to fight against. Anakin and Padme stand around their communicator on the bridge of their ship, receiving information from their Inquisitors about the hunt for Ahsoka and Yoda. Anakin is leaning in intently, waiting for any news about the Jedi. Padme had sensed a change in Anakin after the mention of his old apprentice Ahsoka's name. She can sense deep down that he wants to bring her to their side, but he knows that isn't possible. Ahsoka is a true light side user, and this would be impossible to convert her to their side. She must die, and Anakin knows this. Padme thinks back to her days of her past, when her master Darth Plagueis first came to visit her on Naboo, when she was just 4 years old. It was a coincidence they even met. Plagueis had business with her father, and didn't sense anything in Padme. But Padme, at just 4 years old, could sense the power within Plagueis, and made herself known to the Sith Lord. Plagueis was bewildered, almost frightened when this occurred. Plagueis thought he had found the perfect apprentice in Sidious, and didn't think it could get any better. Somehow, he had found this young girl with maybe the most potential in the Force ever on Naboo. Plagueis had already denounced the rule of 2, and had been training other apprentices in case Sidious didn't turn out right. But now with Padme, this would not be a problem. In this very moment, the Sith victory was assured. For the next 2 days, no interesting news is delivered to them by the Inquisitors. They have sacked countless villages and towns in search for any Jedi, but to no success. On the 3rd day, the Grand Inquisitor's fleet is attacked in the dead of space. Suddenly, tens of rebel ships come out of hyperspace and take them on directly. In the heat of battle, the Grand Inquisitor calls the Skywalkers and tells Anakin that he can sense over 10 Jedi fighting in this battle and tells them they're losing. Anakin orders them to retreat and get away. He looks at Padme and they both know what's happened. The reason that there have been no Jedi in the last 5 years is that they've been secretly gathering together and slowly rebuilding the Order. They now deem their number high enough and power strong enough that they can stand a chance against the Skywalkers. And not only that, they have joined the Rebel Alliance. Anakin looks upon his pregnant wife, Padme, and puts his hand on her stomach, muttering that this is the worst time for this. In the following year, the rebels increase their output and begin directly attacking Imperial facilities. With the help of the Jedi, they are mostly successful. The Inquisitors have attempted to fight back, but no Jedi have been defeated. However, the Inquisitors' numbers have reduced to 23. The Skywalkers can only estimate how many Jedi are currently united and hold it at around 50. They have ramped up production on their Death Star, the plans they stole from Sidious after his death. The last thing they want is for the rebels and Jedi to find out about its existence, but they know they eventually will. Padme gives birth to twin children, a boy and a girl, Luke and Leia. These children are the future of their family. Now that Padme is no longer pregnant, she is back to full strength and fighting capacity. They know they need all the firepower they can get, and reach out to Darth Maul, who has been lurking in the shadows. With Kenobi's death, all Maul wants is power, and they offer to reveal some of their secrets of the dark side if he helps them in their fight. Maul agrees and aligns himself with the Skywalkers. One of their spies reveals to Anakin that they found the rebel base on Dantooine and have confirmed the presence of the Jedi there as well. Anakin and Padme set out immediately and bring a good portion of their Imperial fleet with a ground siege squadron with them. They begin traveling into hyperspace towards the planet. At the rebel base, Yoda and Quinlan Vos look at each other and worry as they sense many ships coming towards them in hyperspace and order for their own ships to be deployed to fight back. The Imperial fleet comes out of hyperspace and is met with almost equal resistance. Anakin and Padme are shocked by the firepower of the rebels and didn't expect this. However, the plan continues. They initiate the ground siege and they themselves travel towards the surface. They land with 15 walkers, 10 TIE fighters, 20,000 troops, and 2 extremely powerful Sith Lords, only 1 kilometer from the base. The rebels begin their counterattack. They have 10 heavy cannons at the base and begin firing upon the Imperial forces. The walkers' shields are holding up for now, but it's only a matter of time before they fall. The stormtroopers set up their line and hide from the heavy fire. X and Y wings are deployed to intercept the TIE fighters, and the battle in the sky begins. Blaster fire is deafening, and the heavy cannon fire shakes the ground every time it hits. The walkers concentrate their firepower on the heavy cannons, but their shields are too strong. The heavy cannons end up taking out all 15 walkers. However, the walkers were able to penetrate the defense of 7 of the heavy cannons, leaving only 3 left. Anakin knew this would happen and had sent out sabotagers to sneak into the rebel camp. A team of 5 highly skilled assassins managed to break in and disable the last 3 heavy cannon shields and take out 1. The last 2 are gunned down by the Imperial forces, focusing their power. It is now a battle of Imperial troops and the rebels. The number of rebels was higher than expected, at 10,000, but also only half of the 20,000 stormtroopers. The Imperial forces begin advancing. Anakin and Padme take the lead, dodging all blaster fire with ease. They're only 400 meters away and can see the line of rebel forces. They begin to see the flicker of blue and green appear in the line as they get close. They push forward even further, 200 meters, 100 meters. Maul joins them now, and they stare down the 20 Jedi, waiting for their arrival. 75 meters, 50, 25, the real fight begins. The 3 Sith rush the 20 Jedi. The Jedi of significance include Yoda, Ahsoka, and Quinlan Vos. Anakin takes on Ahsoka. He must be the one to end his old apprentice. Padme takes on Yoda and has dreamed about the day of ending the Jedi Grand Master. Of course, they're not fighting one-on-one, but multiple Jedi at the same time. Ahsoka is utterly shocked by how powerful Anakin has become in the short time as a Sith Lord. He begins cutting down Jedi fighting him, 8 to 6 to 4 in a flash. He utilizes his ability of deadly sight, vaporizing his Jedi opponents. He picks up one Jedi with the Force and crushes him into the size of an atom. He decapitates the last and then pulls Ahsoka close in with the Force and tells her he wishes it could have been different, and pierces her with his blade and hugs her as she perishes. Meanwhile, Padme pulls out her enchanted sword Nightbringer in her right hand and uses the Force to control her purple blade in her left. The fluidity of her movements with her left hand made it impossible for the Jedi Knights opposing her to defend from it. Her enchantment of Nightbringer is so powerful, when it clashes lightsabers, it shatters the blade. Yoda is standing in shock, watching this go down. Padme easily kills 7 of the Jedi in a matter of seconds. She wields a power he did not think possible. She turns her eyes to Yoda and readies for the attack. Yoda stands ready, but is significantly outmatched. The fight goes on for longer than expected, but 5 seconds after it began, it ended, with Padme crossing over her arms and cutting the Master in 4. Maul managed to kill the other Jedi, and the fight was over. The Imperial forces in space dominated the rebels and bombed their base, destroying anything that was left of the rebellion. There were 30 Jedi left around the galaxy that had escaped, but these would ultimately be Padawans and weak knights that would easily be disposed of. Any chance of rebellion had been crushed. There was truly no one that could oppose them now. Together, they captured many of the remaining Jedi and experimented on them. They used Plagueis and Sidious's research in order to search for the power to manipulate the midichlorians to preserve their lives. After 12 long years, when Luke and Leia reached their teenage years, they discover the secret and manage to kill the Jedi in captivity and revive them, only to do the same over and over again. They've done it. Anakin figured out the secret that all Sith Lords of the past have failed to achieve. They could now live forever. Luke and Leia grow up to be just as powerful in the Force, and each have families of their own. The Skywalker dynasty has just begun, and all aid in ruling over the galaxy. Their bonds unmatched and unable to be broken. 100 years have gone by since the death of Yoda and the pitiful rebel movement. They had 4 more children, Kaylin, Ben, Arlen, and Ahsoka Skywalker. They continue to rule together. Their love has not faded. In the last 100 years, their family has expanded, with their children all marrying and having families of their own. They continued this for a few generations, and they now have over 60 great-grandchildren. Every relative controls and governs different sectors over the galaxy under the Skywalker name, each with a Death Star in close reach if any problems arise. Their rule has not been without conflict. They defeated the Yuzong Vong in 26 ABY and the Lost Tribe of the Sith in 46 ABY. However, in recent years, no one has been foolish enough to spark a rebellion. A few began in the decade following Yoda's death. However, the destruction of the rebel leaders' home planets quickly taught the civilians of the Empire to not mess with the Skywalker family. In the last 10 years, they have began to advance their control into the unknown regions. They had conquered the core, the mid, and the outer rim completely, so it's only natural the unknown regions were next. This was a challenge, but they slowly began advancing. Their biggest campaign was the invasion of the Chiss Ascendancy. The Chiss were highly skilled and capable warriors who put up a good fight, but Anakin himself led the campaign and murdered the 9 aristocrat rulers himself. The Ascendancy territory was key, and the person that ruled this region essentially ruled the entire unknown regions. It was a big position, more important than any other in the known galaxy. The secrets and powers it held were unforeseen, and Anakin decided his daughter, Leia, would sit upon its throne. This decision shocked many in the Skywalker family, and whispers began to travel down its lineage. Many believed Luke would be appointed the ruler of the Chiss Ascendancy. Even though Anakin had 6 children, Luke and Leia have always been the strongest, and Luke has always had the edge on Leia. Luke was second in power, only to his parents, with Leia being a close third, so it was natural everyone thought Luke would get control of the Ascendancy. This news didn't go down well in Luke's family. Unrest began to brew, with arguments between family members taking place, but it was just that, talk, until the leaders of Scarif and Molavar met regarding a dispute between their people. The rulers of Scarif was Grace Skywalker, granddaughter to Luke, and the ruler of Molavar was Baron Skywalker, the grandson of Leia. Baron began making fun of Grace, laughing about how his grandmother, Leia, was appointed to rule the Chiss and not Luke. He makes multiple remarks, highlighting that Anakin and Padme must consider Leia higher and stronger than Luke. Grace tells him to shut up, but he just laughs. Baron concludes saying that something must have happened behind the scenes that they don't know about, something that showed Luke's weakness. Grace pushes the table away in frustration, ignites her lightsaber, and points it at Baron, telling him if he speaks another word, he will die. Baron looks at her in the eyes for a few seconds. As Grace goes to put down her blade, Baron tells her he expected a weak emotional outburst from a descendant of Luke. That pushed Grace over the edge. Her red blade scraped the chin of Baron as he leaned back to dodge and ignites his own blade. Grace announced that he will die for disrespecting Luke, and she charges towards him. Their battle was fierce, with neither backing down. They implement strong lightsaber fighting techniques as well as Sith magic in order to overcome the other. The Skywalker family has learnt a lot about the dark side and its abilities in 100 years. Grace uses the Force to throw a desk in front of Baron. He cuts it in half to find Grace right behind, pressing forward at a strong pace. Baron backs up, one step at a time, blocking Grace's strikes. He gets ready to plant his back foot and strike back, but he takes his last step back right into the wall. He tips off balance, and Grace takes the opportunity to spin and decapitate Baron as his body collapses to the floor. Word of Baron's execution at the hands of Grace begins to spread. Leia was furious with Luke. She demands that Luke execute Grace himself as retribution, an eye for an eye. However, Luke boldly proclaimed he would not do this, and that Baron was a weakling in the Force, and stated it would have only been a matter of time before his death. Luke and Leia's relationship has been fairly good up until this point. They always got along well together, but it seemed this might be changing. Leia storms out and vows that Luke will regret this. Luke knows that Leia will also be targeting Grace and sends his most powerful son, but also Grace's father Colt, to Scarif, temporarily to protect her. Colt also brings his Death Star to orbit Scarif to show the length they were willing to go to protect Grace. But this didn't stop Leia. Her resolve was firm. She wouldn't let the murder of one of her own go unpunished. She brings her own Death Star out of hyperspace, accompanied by 4 Imperial Star Destroyers, each led by one of her children. This was a full-blown attack. Colt simply watches in shock and didn't expect this from his aunt. Leia hails Colt's Death Star and demands that he hand over Grace or she will show no mercy and blast them into nothingness. But Colt remains firm. Luke told him that Leia would make a show of things, but reassured Colt that she wouldn't dare attack his son. But he was wrong. Colt refused, and Leia had no choice. She began powering up her Death Star, ready to fire. Colt's officers detect the energy level rising in Leia's Death Star, and he looks at them in surprise. He orders them to charge their own Death Star in response, but it's too late. Leia fires upon them, killing Luke's son Colt, his daughter Grace, as well as his Death Star and Scarif in the process. War breaks out between Leia and Luke's side of the family. The conflict was fierce and devastating, with both sides using the dark side of the Force to gain an advantage. Luke and Leia were ruthless, using their immense power to crush their opponents and enforce their rule. As the war dragged on, the galaxy was torn apart by the conflict. Planets were destroyed, innocent lives were lost, and the future looked bleak. The death toll in the Skywalker family had reached 12, and some of Anakin and Padme's other children's lineage got caught in the crossfire, pulling them into the conflict. Anakin and Padme decided it was time for them to intervene. Anakin initially went by himself, first to Naboo, where Luke and Leia's fleet were fighting in space. Luke managed to make his way onto Leia's command ship. He killed one of Leia's granddaughters as he barges through to the bridge and prepares to fight his sister. But as they go to swing at each other, Anakin jumps in the middle and uses the Force to hold their lightsabers in place, deactivate the blades, and grab their lightsabers with the Force. He looks upon them with his menacing Sith eyes. He explains how he's disappointed in them. Their war has threatened their reign over the galaxy. If anyone wished to undermine them, they would use the chaos of this war to do it. Not only that, they had killed many members of the Skywalker family. They needed to be reminded of who they were. Yes, they were Sith, and the ways of the Sith were war and conflict, but they were siblings first. They better not forget all they've been through together. They each should be satisfied with the damage they've dealt to each other, but now must move past it. If they continue this conflict, there will be no end until the entire family is destroyed. They bow their heads in shame, as they know their father is right. Anakin puts an arm around each of them and looks out the window of Leia's ship to see their mother, Padme, coming out of hyperspace to join them. The space is still, and conflict has been resolved, but out of nowhere, a beam of light pierces straight through Padme's ship, breaking it in half. Anakin and the twins stare in shock as the contents of Padme's ship begin to leach everywhere. Anakin doesn't waste time and boards his one-man cruiser and uses the Force to connect with Padme. He picks her up floating in space, unconscious and without her left leg. Anger takes over Anakin and he thinks about what to do. He flies back to his command ship where Luke and Leia were also waiting. They connect with the rest of their children and Padme explains what happened. A being encased in light claimed their name was Abeloth and that she had come to rid the galaxy of civilization as they know it. Anakin's eyes grow wide when he hears the name Abeloth. He's read about Abeloth during his time researching the Killik, who referred to Abeloth as the bringer of chaos, who escapes her prison whenever the current of the Force changed. The civil war within the Skywalker family must have triggered her release. Anakin goes to inform the Senate of Abeloth's presence, but when he gets there, he realizes it's too late. Abeloth was standing in the Senate, and as soon as Anakin entered, every senator turned towards him in a robotic motion. She had taken over the minds of everyone in the building. She states that the galaxy is now hers, and the time of the Skywalkers has passed. The guards begin circling towards Anakin's position, and he realizes the severity of the situation. He murders every guard on his way out, and leaves to call a Skywalker family meeting. He connects with every member of his family, and tells them about the threat of Abeloth. He explains the story of his past meeting the Ones, and the power they possess. Abeloth is no different. Anakin concludes saying her power must come from somewhere, and that if they find it, they can destroy her. The war had begun. Abeloth had taken over a large chunk of the Skywalker fleet, and she began destroying planets and civilizations one by one. Abeloth had the ability to take over one's mind and body, and many Skywalkers fell to this trap once they confronted Abeloth. The Sith and Abeloth fought each other multiple times, but Abeloth always seemed to escape. She was highly skilled in the Force, and a match for Anakin and Padme themselves. Using Darth's Sith magic, Anakin managed to connect Padme's leg back to her torso. One night, whilst Padme was asleep in her bed, Abeloth appeared. Before Padme could sense her presence, Abeloth took over Padme's body and writhed in her power. Anakin was far away fighting a distant battle, but felt a disturbance in the Force. He contacted his wife immediately, only to hear Abeloth's voice coming from her body. She demanded he surrender, or else his wife will not live another day. Anakin destroyed the room he was in once the transmission ended. He's fought Abeloth multiple times, but has never been able to finish her off. There must be a way, and in his rage, it comes to him. One thing can kill the Ones, the dagger of Mortis. But it's on Mortis. He hasn't been back in over 100 years. He doesn't know if it even exists anymore, but he has a plan. He contacts his 6 children and orders them to come to him right away. The 7 of them fly together towards the coordinates where Mortis was previously. Anakin turns towards his kids and asks them to lend him their strength in the Force as he needs their power. Anakin sticks out 2 hands and begins pulling them apart. In the dead of space, light begins to emerge, the gateway to Mortis. Anakin pulls harder and harder, channeling the Force through his children, allowing him to achieve the ultimate power. He snaps his hands to his side as he rips open the fabric of space and time. The gateway to Mortis has opened. They enter and look around. The planet is mostly destroyed. All buildings crumble to the ground. Anakin heads towards where he killed the sun all those years ago, and finds what he's looking for, the dagger of Mortis that can kill Abeloth. Abeloth's base was Coruscant, where she continued to manipulate the government to her side. She had taken over Padme's body, so this was particularly easy. She looks to the atmosphere, as Anakin and his entire fleet begin making their way towards him. Anakin would do anything to save his wife, and a direct campaign was his best opportunity. He and his 6 children fly down towards the surface, whilst the starships fight above. They head straight towards Abeloth's location, who was ready for the confrontation. She wielded Nightbringer, Padme's ancient Sith sword, that could break the blades of lightsabers. but Anakin had come with his own sword. The fight begins as the 6 Skywalker children and Anakin surround Abeloth, disguised in their mother's body. She swings Nightbringer ferociously and blasts the children with lightning. Kaylin advances from behind, going for the killing strike, but a swift kick in the midsection sends her back. In his anger, Ben goes to counter Abeloth's strike, but gets sloppy and allows Abeloth to catch him by his neck. His father swoops in, bodying Abeloth out of the way, only seconds before Ben's neck would have been cracked. Abeloth stands strong, but realizes she cannot overpower their entire family. Abeloth stomped on the ground multiple times, putting every ounce of the Force into each blow. This caused a cataclysmic earthquake on the planet, and the Skywalkers could hear the buildings beginning to crack and crumble around them. Abeloth thought she could do this to lure the Sith away and make her escape. She knew she couldn't win this fight, but she was wrong. She overestimated the Sith. Anakin did not care about Coruscant. He would be willing to let it all die if it meant he could save his wife. He'd let the whole galaxy burn if he could save Padme. He connects with his wife's body through the Force and begins seeing reality from Padme's eyes. He'd never done this before. He didn't know it was possible. Could it be there was a Force dyad between Anakin and Padme? Anakin's desperation to save her must have activated it. Anakin took the chance and transferred his Force essence and power through the dyad into Padme, which forced Abeloth out of her mind and body, causing the frightened looking being to drop to the floor. Taking this opportunity, Anakin grips her in place with the Force and throws the dagger of Mortis right through her chest, killing Abeloth. They had to get out of there immediately. It could be seconds before buildings collapsed on them. They used the Force to run towards their ship at tremendous speeds and managed to escape. They looked behind them at Coruscant. The Senate was no longer under Abeloth's control, but it didn't matter, as every skyscraper toppled to the ground, turning Coruscant's surface to rubble. Anakin and his children hugged Padme deeply. They had almost lost her. But through the conflict, the majority of the Skywalker family survived. Although Coruscant was gone, they could quickly re-establish their absolute control over the galaxy. Anakin was convinced Abeloth was the final hurdle in their quest for galactic control, and now no one could oppose them. The Skywalker family would continue to breed and pass down their genes through generations and generations. Anakin and Padme, the head of the family and ruling dynasty of the galaxy, would reign unopposed until the end of time. 50 years have passed since Abeloth returned and almost destroyed the Skywalker's empire. After Coruscant's destruction, it took some time to retake control and ensure order around the galaxy, but eventually after the Senate was rebuilt on Naboo, order had returned. Anakin spends most of his time with various members of his family, traveling around the galaxy and ensuring there is no opposition to their empire. One day, when Anakin's sitting in his throne room on Naboo, he falls to his knees as he senses a disturbance in the Force. This is different from his normal visions of the Force that shows him the future. What he's sensing now is something that's happening at this very moment. He sees waves of green, blue, and yellow, the colors of Jedi lightsabers, and many beings strong in the light side of the Force, congregated together with a massive fleet of starships geared up for long-distance hyperspace travel. Anakin comes out of his vision on his hands and knees, dripping in sweat, with Padme by his side asking him what happened. He thinks about this for a moment. What has he just seen? It looked like a Jedi Order, but what could this order be? Did the Jedi manage to rebuild the Order under his nose? No, the Force would have shown him this if it happened. He reaches out with the Force to extend his range across his entire galaxy, but he doesn't sense an inkling of light side energy. He cleansed his galaxy of this years ago, but then it hits him. The Jedi from his vision must not be from his galaxy. He sets up an emergency meeting with the Council, which includes his 6 children, and details what he's seen. The Council is shocked and asks how this is even possible. Anakin explains how the Skywalker Empire's presence in the dark side has become so strong that it's leached and infiltrated so far across the universe that they've become detectable by this Jedi Order, who are planning on coming to cleanse it. He tells each of them to discuss this with their respective families, gather their forces, and gear up for all-out war. Anakin plans the defense of their galaxy and feels fear for the first time in 50 years. He saw the size of their Jedi Order, not only the number of Force users they have, but also the number of ships likely rivals their own. Anakin feels it once it happens. His galaxy infiltrated by the light side of the Force as the intergalactic Jedi Order comes out of hyperspace. He reaches out with the Force and feels them arrive in the unknown regions. He contacts Leia immediately, who's atop of her Death Star, as her forces have engaged the Jedi's fleet in space. He commands her to fire the Death Star immediately, and she powers it up and locks onto their command ship. The Death Star's deafening shot travels across the dead of space, but before it reaches its target, the command ship fires its own laser bolt with an energy level just as high as the Death Star's cannon and hits it dead on, causing the Death Star's laser bolt to dissipate into nothingness. Anakin watches in shock as this happens and orders Leia to retreat immediately, and she manages to pull out as much of her forces as possible and gives up the unknown regions. She groups with Anakin's fleet around Naboo, and Anakin meets with the Council to discuss their counterattack, but halfway through the meeting, they are hailed by the enemy. A middle-aged female Jedi appears in front of them. She greets Emperor Anakin and introduces herself as Grandmaster Serena Valeria. She tells them why they have come, that their empire has become too strong, and the Sith's influence has run too deep and corrupted their galaxy for far too long, that she is the leader of an intergalactic Jedi Order with the sole purpose of traveling from galaxy to galaxy, ruled and occupied by a Sith empire to defeat them. She explains that she's been doing this for 800 years and offers Anakin an opportunity to surrender, that victory is impossible. But Anakin responds, saying she sure is powerful, but doubts that she's ever met anyone like himself and Padme, two people who have started their own family dynasty that has lasted hundreds of years. They are unique, and so is their power in the Force. Defeating them will not be easy. Master Valeria tells Anakin that he's right. A family empire is unforeseen in her 800 years of dominance, but this doesn't matter and will not change the outcome. Anakin senses the transmission ending and reaches out to choke her with the Force, but he's too late. Once again, Anakin and Padme's galaxy is thrust into chaos as the intergalactic Jedi Order, led by Valeria, have begun their attacks. Anakin commands from Naboo and is in a constant state of meditation, coordinating their response and moving his troops across the galaxy. This Jedi Order must have encountered Death Star-like weaponry powered by kyber crystals before and invented a defense so they weren't as effective as he thought they would be. However, normal cannons and bombs will be effective once the opponent's defenses are breached. Anakin was curious about how the Jedi would fight and wanted a good measure of their power. All the Sith in Anakin and Padme's galaxy had the blood of the Chosen One, so were at a minimum power level equal to that of Prime Darth Maul. He expected this to be superior to the Jedi Order. However, this wasn't the case. Their strength seemed to be equal, and Anakin lost a lot of descendants to the Jedi, but the Jedi also lost a good chunk of their members. Anakin wondered how this could be the case, and suspected that each time the intergalactic Jedi Order defeated a Sith empire, they would recruit some of the strongest Jedi of that galaxy to join their forces. No wonder Master Valeria hadn't lost for 800 years, and this might be the strongest light side order in the entire universe. Anakin doesn't worry about this, as she's met her match in the Skywalker Empire and is confident in their victory. Anakin's biggest defeat took place when Leia's forces were entirely wiped out defending the Hutt system. Valeria herself brought her own fleet and ravaged Leia in battle, overcoming her with superior battle tactics and overall strength. Leia lost 2 of her children in this battle, but the rest and herself managed to escape. Anakin decides it's time for himself to enter the war, and brings his own forces to wipe out a portion of the Jedi around the Endor system. He defeats 2 of the 8 members of the Intergalactic Jedi Order's Council, and successfully killed them. However, it wasn't easy, and they would have been a match for any of his children, and wonders whether Valeria's power might surpass his own. They've each lost around 20% of their forces, and Anakin wonders whether Valeria might be beginning to panic. He doubts she's ever lost this much in the last century. Valeria suffers another significant defeat as Anakin's youngest child, Ahsoka Skywalker, accompanied by Padme, had a huge victory at the Battle of Scarif to successfully kill one more council member. Valeria talks with the remainder of her council. She details the recent loss of council member Master Core and how their forces are at 75% capacity. One of the Jedi Council members, Master Cairo, asks Valeria how this galaxy came to be ruled by the Sith so quickly, as their record stated that this galaxy was protected by a large Jedi Order, around 10,000 members, with an extremely powerful High Council. Valeria tells Cairo that what he says is correct, that she herself came to this galaxy around 400 years ago to personally ascertain the state of it, and met with the leader of the Jedi Order of the time, who was extremely powerful and had the potential to sit on this very council. His species lived for around 900 years, so she determined that this galaxy wouldn't be at threat of a Sith insurgence anytime soon. But somehow, Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala managed to defeat the Jedi Order by themselves and start their own family dynasty. Valeria tells them something wasn't right, that Emperor Anakin's power isn't natural and unlike anything she's ever seen before. But her power wasn't natural either, and she was one of the strongest Jedi the universe had ever seen. The war continues for another month, as the Jedi and Sith forces clash in the Skywalker galaxy. Padme had a lot of success in battle and enjoyed dueling, as she hadn't had much opportunity in the last 100 years, and she won her last battle on Onderon. Anakin's happy with how the war effort was going. He thinks back to his Clone War days, fighting alongside the clones and his best friends Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. Gosh, that felt like a lifetime ago to him, and sure it was. He decides it's time to make a huge dent in the Jedi's forces, and wants to attack Valeria directly. He prepared for this duel for 150 years, refining and mastering various Sith techniques to overcome the epitome of the Jedi, Grandmaster Valeria. Their forces are centered around Jakku, and Anakin brings his own, Padme and Luke's forces to attack them directly. They come out of hyperspace and are instantly thrust into battle. Valeria calls upon her council to deploy their forces and commends Anakin for his boldness in battle. He must be confident to attack them directly, and there's no doubt the victor of this war will be decided here and now. Anakin pilots a Sith cruiser with himself, Padme, Luke, and 20 other powerful members of the Skywalker family. He weaves his way through the battlefield, dodging blaster fire from both sides and the single-man Jedi cruisers. He heads straight for the Jedi command ship and censors around 30 Jedi present, as the rest are spread throughout their forces in other areas of the galaxy. They land in their hangar and enter attack mode. Anakin is met by Jedi Master Illyrion, a council member who wields a lightsaber whip, a weapon that Anakin had only heard of but never faced. Anakin instantly felt Illyrion use Force Light, a light side technique that would weaken the Darksider's connection to the Force, but Anakin casts his own Force Drain to even the playing field. Illyrion wraps her whip around Anakin's lightsaber and yanks it out of his hand and lunges towards him. She cracks her whip towards Anakin, heading straight for his chest, but Anakin simply stands in place and lets it come towards him. Illyrion thinks she has Anakin beat, but before the whip connects, Padme throws Nightbringer across the room, blocking and shattering the Force whip. Anakin reaches out with his hand and grabs Illyrion by the neck and lifts her up into the air as she squirms around, gasping for air, but Anakin cracks her neck and throws her to the side. The hangar doors open and in rush 30 Jedi, and Anakin commands his forces to attack. One of the Jedi heads straight for him, but Anakin can sense he's a weaker one out of the bunch, trying to make a name for himself by killing the Emperor. But Anakin simply stares at him, activating his deadly sight, and the Jedi bursts into flames by the sheer strength of Anakin's dark side vision. Anakin looks behind the pack of the Jedi to see Master Valeria take off her cape and arm herself. Anakin smirks as the real battle is about to begin. Anakin and Valeria rush each other and clash in the center of the room. Anakin utilizes his ability to fly, combined with his Force speed to dart around the battlefield, looking for an opening to break Valeria's defenses. But she was good, a master of defense, and adopted a similar style to his fallen brother Obi-Wan. She wielded a bright purple blade, signalizing that she was the master of the Order, and she showed this in her power. He threw every Force technique he knew at her: Force Choke, Crush, Drain, Corrupt, Lightning, but she managed to block every single time with her own Force potential. Valeria also attacked with light side techniques, She used Alter Environment, a force power that altered the environment around them, creating a stream of fog that blinded Anakin. He didn't worry, as he could still sense her through the force, but what she did was unexpected. She cast Electrical Judgment, a light side force lightning, which connected to every fog particle and electrocuted Anakin temporarily, holding him in place. She dissipated the fog, hit Anakin with a few force stuns, and rushed towards him with her blade. But Anakin recouped his strength in the last moment, and blocked her strike with a force shield. Anakin commends her mid-battle, telling her she's strong, but it's time to up the pace. Anakin uses Force Shadow to create an after-image to confuse Valeria, as he attacks her relentlessly. He casts a Force Drain, attempting to consume her life energy, but her Force Light counteracts this. He uses the Force to grab Padme's blade, Nightbringer, and thrusts it towards Valeria, but Anakin's shocked, as her lightsaber doesn't shatter. They hold their blades in place, attempting to overpower the other with brute strength, but Illyria calls on her allies and uses Force Meld, a technique where a number of Force users join their minds together through the Force, drawing upon each other, allowing her power to exceed Anakin as she shatters Nightbringer and slashes down across Anakin's chest and sends him flying back. She follows up with Force Combustion, a telekinetic force ability that allows her to cause inanimate objects to explode. Anakin flies across the room and lands on his back after being hit with serious damage. He gets to one knee as Valeria walks towards him. She taunts him and laughs how Anakin thought he was the most powerful Force user the universe had ever seen. He was hailed as the strongest, and yet turned out to be painfully ordinary. Valeria raises her hands and goes to blast Electric Judgment, but she looks at her hands as the Force technique fails. She goes to unleash it again, but once again it fails. She looks at Anakin and asks him what he's done, who's reaching out with his hand and smirking. Although Valeria had all the light side techniques at her disposal, this is one power she will never learn, and the fact she doesn't know what Anakin is doing confirms it in his mind. He explains how he's connecting to the midichlorians inside of her, 25,000 per cell, and is slowly decreasing that number, reducing her connections to the midichlorians. Palpatine was right all those years ago, only a power that could be achieved by a Sith. This ability is only temporary and won't cause permanent damage, but she won't be alive in time for her cells to recover. And because of this, she can't use any Force techniques. She asks Anakin why he didn't do this from the start, who simply replies he wanted to play with her for a while before he ended things. He tells Valeria she was the strongest for a while, but the moment Anakin was born, thrust into the universe, conceived by the Force itself, he took her place. Valeria kneels before him, as she knows her time is over, as Anakin blasts her away, causing her flesh to detach from the bones and muscle below. And with her death, Anakin assisted the rest of his family in defeating the Jedi in the hangar, and they successfully took over the heart of the intergalactic Jedi Order, and their victory was assured. With Valeria's death, there is no one who can stop Anakin. He and Padme take out the rest of the Jedi in the hangar bay and pilot their ships to help their forces take out the Jedi spaceships. The Skywalker Empire is successful in defeating a majority of Valeria's ships and Jedi Knights, but makes sure to keep some alive. With this victory, 80% of the Jedi's forces have been defeated. Their victory is guaranteed, and Anakin leaves his children to clean up the last 20%. In the following weeks, they are successful and end up completely wiping out the intergalactic Jedi Order and ensuring they remain in control of the galaxy. The Skywalker family celebrated their victory with banquets and parades all around the galaxy. The people of their galaxy didn't necessarily hate the Skywalkers. They brought control and order to the galaxy, were harsh on crime and insurrection, but mostly allowed people to live freely. So when the Skywalkers won the war, they celebrated along with them. Anakin sits on his throne, next to his wife Padme, as he looks out into the dining hall. Hundreds of people from his bloodline, all cheering and having a good time with each other. He looks at his wife and reminisces about the last 150 years together, and can't believe they've come this far. He's so happy he's been able to create a large family with all of whom he loves deeply, but he can't help but think about the future. Immortality is a blessing that they've worked hard to achieve, but it also comes with a curse. To live forever means that eventually you will run out of things to do, and Anakin thinks he might be coming up on this. Yes, he loves his family, and could spend an eternity together with them alone, but wants to search for activities to take up his time. And with the Intergalactic Jedi Order's defeat, he thinks of the perfect opportunity. They recovered many ships from the Order, and on each ship is the ability to travel from galaxy to galaxy, technology previously oblivious to his empire. But if he tasks his top scientists on this, he has no doubt they can discover the secret and reverse engineer the technology and begin mass producing it. He hits his glass with his spoon, which causes everyone in the room to silence and look up at him whilst he stands. He congratulates everyone on their victory in the war, but now tells them, with this victory comes an entire new opportunity. He tells them his plan, to occupy the Jedi's technologies and gain the ability to travel between galaxies, spreading the Skywalker family influence, defeating the Jedi Orders around the galaxy, and gaining control of countless systems. Through this, they will become the most powerful empire the universe had ever seen, and unlock all secrets of the Force. As he concludes his speech, everyone in the room cheers as they all celebrate together. Anakin sets his scientists on the job immediately, and they were successful in reverse engineering the intergalactic hyperspace drive, and they now have this technology. Anakin and Padme decide it's best to prepare for 100 years, and commands all of his family to have more children, to expand their bloodlines so they can occupy and control more galaxies, and to do this, must have more Skywalkers. Anakin and Padme themselves have a couple more children to extend their council so they can have more powerful members in their empire. 100 long years of preparation, and the time has finally come. Their fleet is massive, backed by their Sith empire, which is made up of over 10,000 Sith, with the Skywalker blood running through all of them. Together, Anakin and Padme conquer their first galaxy, and use this to create a blueprint when taking over other galaxies. They start by wiping out the Jedi Order, then take control of the Senate, and use this to address the entire galaxy. After this, Anakin would leave his children, and sometimes grandchildren in charge of the galaxy, and control the events from there, spreading their influence, and making sure they gain complete control of the galaxy, and can begin implementing their ideals to create order. From here, they would go to another galaxy, then another, then another. Anakin was simply too strong, and no Jedi around the galaxy could stop him. In their conquest, they encountered a few more intergalactic Jedi Orders, but none that rivaled the one that attacked their galaxy, and Anakin was disappointed that no Jedi had strength equal to Valeria. But no matter, he got enough enjoyment in their conquest. He thinks back to Valeria, and in a way, owes her for all of this, and hopes she is watching from above, as he undoes everything she had done and fought for around the universe. Her arrogance blinded her, just like the original Jedi in his galaxy. Sometimes Anakin will go to a galaxy alone, and wipe out a Jedi Order by himself. He's mastered every dark side technique possible, and no amount of Jedi were enough to defeat him. He did encounter some unique Jedi during his conquest, wielding interesting weapons, using rare Force abilities, but it was no match for the Chosen One. He gathered the best scientists from the galaxies under his control, and got them to work together to improve the intergalactic hyperspace drive, so that it became just as easy as normal hyperspace travel from planet to planet. With this, he and Padme didn't have to be separated for too long, and could come back together after each of their individual missions. They created a communication system across galaxies, which allowed Anakin to communicate with all his forces around the galaxy, no matter how far, and could personally come to deal with any insurrection and resistance that they came to face. The Skywalker family kept growing, as did their influence around the galaxy. 500 years pass, as the Skywalker Empire has now occupied half of the known universe. They never encountered a galaxy or Jedi Order they could not defeat, and due to their exponential growth, their family has reached over 1 million members. But this was not enough, and Anakin was forced to delegate some galaxies to people in power who weren't part of their family, but they all remained loyal, as everyone knew there was no chance of opposing Anakin and Padme. After these 500 years, Anakin and Padme decide to personally take a break from invading galaxy to galaxy and return to their original one. Anakin hadn't been back here in 100 years, but Padme had a surprise for him. She takes him back to the countryside, where they walk the fields where Padme first realized she was falling in love with Anakin, and they think back on this time so many years ago. They chuckle how Padme was going to manipulate Anakin, but ended up falling for him. They finish up at the lake house, the location they first kissed and then got married. Padme had set up photos inside the house from various points in their life, from start to finish, from when they were just children, to all the accomplishments they've had. The victories, the children, the family moments all bonding together. They hug each other on the couch and spend the night reminiscing about their past and all they have achieved together. Anakin and Padme Skywalker, the two strongest Force users the galaxy had ever seen, deeply in love and truly would rule until the end of time. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the final part of this series. I promise it will be the conclusion. I know a few of you enjoy rewatching the series, so I will upload the full 5 parts together in one video with better audio and editing for a better experience. Leave your thoughts in the comments below and let me know what other series you'd like me to do.